But do you think that people would say that why isn't Irshad going down to Pakistan or going down to Libya or to Sudan or to or to Palestine, and Irshad would start a dialogue series with these people?
But I have, Imran, and I continue to. And you see, this is part of the
Aren't you
misconception.
scared for your life or something?
No, but hold on a second. First of all, you're saying, on the one hand, critics would say you're not doing this, and now when I say, but I am doing this, you're asking me, aren't you scared for your life? You see, you can't have it both ways. The reality is that while I get death threats, I am not scared of my life.
But you are getting death threats.
Of course I'm getting death threats.
And yet you are, what I would like the viewers to know,
yes,
that you are doing these things.
Yes, despite the death threats, absolutely. Look, if I am killed tomorrow as a result of the views that I'm voicing today, I will die a content person.
Do you feel that?
I am not afraid of death.
But you feel that it's so strong that you can get killed anytime?
When an email comes to you, as I said earlier, in the language of Urdu, saying you are now the woman writer who is subject to death, and this comes from your own city, Imran, where I could be walking around, taking a streetcar, getting into a taxi, and be shot point blank, of course it can happen anytime. But I'm not going to whine about it. I'm not going to say, oh, woe is me. I'm not going to claim to be a victim. I continue to do what I do. This summer, I am heading to the West Bank in order to help a group of enthusiastic students begin Project Ijtihad Palestine. I have already been to Egypt, as I mentioned. I travel throughout the Middle East, in Yemen, and Syria, and Lebanon, engaging with young Muslims. And by the way, I was supposed to be going to Pakistan last year, but the Canadian embassy there advised me not to because it was too dangerous given the level of controversy associated with my work.
And who would fund these adventures?
Me.
You would fund your own trip?
I always do. I always do. As a matter of fact, the translations that I've talked about of my book that I have posted free of charge on my website are funded by me. And so those critics who say, all she is a money-making opportunist, sure, you can make that argument. You're free to do that in my world. But it is simply dishonest to say that, because if I wanted to make money, I wouldn't be spending my own money in order to offer other Muslims in the rest of the world the opportunity to read these ideas free of charge.
Hang on, let me get it straight. Irshad Manji is writing the books on her own. She's distributing the books free of charge. She's funding her own trips, going to those areas where change is required the most, but it's also dangerous for her life because she's getting death threats, and she's still moving ahead.
Correct.
What is driving Irshad to do all of that?
Two things. My sheer love of Allah. And don't get me started on this, because honestly, I can already feel the tears welling up. My sheer love of Allah. God's good name has to be reclaimed. And for what has God put us on this earth to do, if not to live up to the wonders of the words that He has given us? But more than that, or I should say in addition to that, it is also the fact that I have the gratitude, Imran, for winding up in a part of the world, Canada, where as a Muslim girl and now as a Muslim woman, I can dream big dreams and tap much, if not most, of my potential. What a gift. And I didn't earn this gift, Imran. I'm a refugee to Canada. I didn't fight for these freedoms. They were handed to me. Every morning I wake up saying, thank you, Allah, for giving me these gifts. Now, how can I show you that my niyyah is pure and that I am earning the freedoms that I have been given? And so gratitude is ultimately what drives me. And you know, I point this out, this word gratitude, because I find it quite funny. When so many of my Muslim critics call me kufr, the root of kufr is somebody who is ungrateful to God. And yet I live my life being grateful to God and showing Allah in so many ways, in the ways that I know how, that I need to be earning what I have been given. And that is not by being selfish about it. It is by exercising my voice on behalf of the hundreds of millions of others who do not yet enjoy the privilege of having a voice for themselves.
Well, one sequence I remember from your film where you went out to this lady and you asked her that, why have you been saying these things about me? And then she kind of made a fool out of herself because she didn't know what to say, or she wasn't making a point about it. Tell us a little bit about the film. We'll be running shots of the film as we speak, but what made you make that film, and how did you walk up to that woman and talk to her about that?
Well, let me start with the film itself. It's entitled Faith Without Fear, and this is a documentary that follows my own journey to reconcile Islam with freedom. By the way, some of my cheeky Pakistani friends say, in that case, it should have been called Mission Impossible, okay? But I'm much more hopeful than they are, and obviously much more faithful than they are. I fundamentally do believe, as I said earlier, that Islam began as a religion of justice, and that it is we Muslims who have corrupted it. This documentary shows the various twists and turns that I have taken in my own journey to understand that the problem at the end of the day is not Islam, which values learning. It is rather Muslims. And it is we Muslims who have to take ourselves out of a tribal 7th century context and update our own mindset for a 21st century pluralistic context. Which brings us to a fellow Muslim, namely the woman who I run into on the street in Vancouver. She's protesting a speech that I'm giving at the Vancouver Public Library, and she's handing out pamphlets that say that Irshad Manji is the devil in disguise. And I'm engaging her quite, with a great deal of civility and respect. And I ask her, don't you think that this is hate speech? No, she says. No, it is not hate speech. Really, I say. She said, no, because you really are, leading our sons and daughters to fire. And when I read more of the pamphlet to her, she seems actually quite surprised by how intense the language is. At one point, she says, oh, sorry, what did I write? And then she says, oh yes. Well, it's not you that I'm demonizing. I say, but my name is on it, Irshad Manji. And she said, yes, but it's not, I'm not calling you a demon. And she said, and I said to her, but wait, you're saying the devil in disguise. If that's not demonization, I don't know what is. And finally, she ends off saying, okay, so what? Freedom of speech. And this is exactly the point, Imran, that Muslims in the West know very well how to exercise their freedom of speech. The problem is twofold. One is that when they're exercising their freedom of speech, they often try to deny others, particularly reform-minded Muslims, from exercising our freedom of speech at the same time. They call us self-hating Muslims, they call us Islamophobes, they call us racists, neo-imperialists, when they themselves are doing exactly what we are seeking the right to do, namely engage our own minds and speak our consciences.